Well, thanks so much for joining the session. And sorry, we're starting a few minutes late, so I'll be rushing a bit. We've already heard from an insurance company right now, which was more about the insurance company using AI to improve their processes and so on. Now we're looking at the different direction is insurance company using what they do, insurance, to help others adopt AI. I'll talk about two things mostly, AI performance risks and then insurance solutions, how to handle that. The goal overall is for someone who's a vendor of AI to better sell their solutions and for someone who uses AI to feel more confident to roll out the tools. In terms of introduction, my name is Jascha Prosiegel. I'm responsible for the North American market for all kinds of AI risk within Munich Re. We've been around since 2018 as an underwriting team for AI risk. The company Munich Re has been around a bit longer, since 1880. So we're beyond that startup stage by now. And our team is split between the US and Europe, writing business all over the globe. So I guess let's look at if you're a decision maker at a corporation right now. You probably, I guess your perspective looks something like this. Let me see, this is not what I'm seeing here. There we go. So you're saying, okay, corporations are investing billions and billions of dollars every year into AI. Probably I, as a decision maker, should also do something. So you're diving in even further and you're saying, okay, I look at all the different parts of the value chain. AI is a critical part in some, IT, that makes sense. I'm looking at the forecast and the forecast says, wow, okay, seems like everyone is doing something here. So I should be doing this as well, right? A huge opportunity, or I'm lacking behind if I don't take up. So then, if I'm a big corporation, I probably talk to risk management and say, well, we want to automate this big part of my company here. And they throw back at you tons of risks. Some you know from other topics like privacy. Corporations have learned how to do data that should be protected. There are also very standardized insurance policies to handle such risks. And maybe some things are new, like IP infringement, if you want to use generative AI, or robustness of models in general. So the big question is, okay, I want to implement this AI tool inside the company or buy it outside the company. What about the risks? Am I going to do this nevertheless, or will I say, this sounds too risky to me? So let's understand what this risk is. And I guess we have mostly AI people in the room, so I'll speed up over this, but train a model, you don't have accuracy, whatever your performance metric might be. You maybe have a small error rate, you have some fluctuation over time, over subsets, whatever your tool is. As a buyer of AI, I can probably understand, okay, 95% accuracy. That makes sense to me. Fluctuation over time and understanding that and planning for that is already, I would say, pretty tricky for someone who just wants to buy software to take over a task. But the big question then is, what if this bar here around the green line, what if that drops dramatically? Is that possible? How expensive is that, right? So quick math. If you think about a standard model where we're basically saying, okay, I have my x's and I want to project onto my y, my target variable. So there's two types of how a model can drift off. We have the covariate shift. We're saying, okay, a model has been trained on a population. Now in production, I'm using it on a different population. Maybe intentionally, I'm going to a new market with my model, or maybe unintentionally, because just the market I'm in is changing. That could, of course, lead to my average performance to drop dramatically if that happens suddenly and I can't retrain fast enough, or my supplier of AI can't retrain fast enough. The other topic, of course, can be that the logic changes, right? You trained some logic into your model, and then that changes. For example, if you have some kind of macroeconomic trends, or you have seasonality, which you did not account for in your training data. Same result, your model could drift off, performance would drop. Maybe you notice it too late, maybe you can't retrain it fast enough. You can lose a lot of money, and I'll give you some examples about that. So, but now this is kind of what you're confronted with, right? As a buyer of AI and also as a salesperson of AI, that you say, well, they throw this question back at me, like, what happens? Like, am I just going to lose money? Where's that money coming from? As a decision maker, you're looking at this, I would say, the following way. There's an uncertain risk that is kind of random. I can't assess it because I'm not an AI expert, right? I just want to buy some software. I'm just a businessman. And it happens unforeseen, and it might cause dramatic financial impact. Sounds to me like something that is very much in the interest of the insurance industry. I'm also not demanding that a business is building a hurricane model and then making reserves for hurricanes. No, they just buy insurance for that. So let's look at what solutions could be, and those are real products and real cases. You'll see a logo and so on, for how to take out that risk of the equation of implementing AI. One example is insurance-backed performance guarantees. So what does it mean? You have some AI provider running around here at this conference a lot, I think, and they're selling their solution maybe with a subscription, and they bundle it with a promise for the performance. So they're really saying, for this certain KPI, I guarantee maybe the 95% we've seen on the slides before. And if not, I'll pay for the damages, or I'll pay a lump sum per case where I'm wrong. This way you transfer the risk of the AI not performing, the risk of the retraining not being fast enough, away from the customer to the AI provider. Now, if you're an AI provider and maybe you're a startup and you do 20 of these deals, you suddenly accumulate all these risks, right? You know, the risk-taking company or software company. So the second part of that equation is one insurance policy that basically says, whenever you have one of these payouts, send us the bill and we'll indemnify you. So through that chain, the customer feels confident, has an AI that works, and if it doesn't, gets the costs indemnified. The AI provider has an easier sales discussion, maybe a shorter proof of concept phase, and the whole risk ends up kind of in the insurance industry with a big capital standing behind those risks and diversification in all these mechanisms. An example, this is very abstract, I know. An example would be CloudCover, a cybersecurity company here from the US that focuses on cybersecurity for cloud environment and big networks. And what they do is they now say, well, here's my tool, but I also promise you will not have a successful ransomware attack. And if you do, I'll pay for it. I also promise there will not be more than a certain amount of false positive alarms. For someone who is not an expert in cybersecurity, but just wants to purchase a solution for for example, university as customers, they might say, well, I have these 10 providers. That's a very good signal that they take responsibility for their tool, and I'm actually getting a payout. I also don't worry that if there's enough money, because there's some insurance company standing behind this promise, even though CloudCover is a small company. And then there's another way how this can be done, transferring this risk from someone using AI. And that would be, imagine you're a corporation and you want to automate a certain part of your value chain through AI. And I'll show you an example. But you do this, and I guess the stories, at least that we always hear, is there's data science team and they're being hired and it's all costing money and they're doing very cool things, but often in a sandbox, a little bit of trying things out. But getting those actually into production and getting the proof throughout the company and stopping the manual process that was there before, very difficult. So what the concept here is that you just say, okay, I'm going to implement that AI, I'm going to use that tool, and if it goes wrong, I'm backed by some insurance policy. I'll give you an example. I can't say the name, it's a bank. So very interesting case that happened here. Bank has the loan business and they use various service providers, like all banks do, for credit scoring, for property valuations, maybe fraud detection, and so on. At some point they said, well, we have all this data here and we have all this knowledge about our business, and we hired all these data scientists, let's just build an AI and get rid of one of these service providers. Sounds great, and probably the performance is even better since we all believe in AI here in the room. So they save money by not using a service provider. But before there was AI, if someone did not perform, they could just sue the service provider. Right? There were contracts to deliver. Now, I just have an AI tool. I can't sue the tool if that drifts away. I can also not sue my data science team. So I'm just now suddenly stuck with that risk. It looks a bit different. Before it was maybe a human risk or a service provider risk, kind of, do they have the processes under control? Now I more have a different type of risk, like a systemic risk of drift, or that I lose knowledge by people leaving the company, and therefore my retraining isn't that good. So all these types of different risks, but they're on my balance sheet now, right? So I develop a cool new tool that saves me $1 million. It might make me lose $10 million a year. For that, they then get a very targeted insurance policy that just says, if your model does not perform according to this KPI, the damage is paid. So those are just two concepts, how to transfer the risk, I think, in both cases from the person or the company that uses AI away to someone whose business it is to actually take risk. And this is not about transferring this with people being lazy or making mistakes. It's just taking out the random risk and the uncertainty that any trained model brings with it. I guess the reaction might be, okay, well, two examples, yes, very specific. Obviously, for that, I brought some other logos. So we've been doing deals and partnerships across industries, like in fraud, of course, where it's very easy to measure what your loss is if you don't detect fraud. Also social media content moderation, battery analytics, all types of areas where I did not expect that we'll have that in our book. We see demand, I would say, mostly from industries where they say, I'm selling to a conservative buyer. Right? I'm selling to someone who doesn't know how AI works. They also don't want to know how AI works. They just want to buy a solution and take the benefits. Yes, yeah, we're good on time. I'll just finish up with 3 statements. I guess just our perspective on how this whole topic of insurance and AI risks will develop. First one is, I guess, pretty obvious, at least we agree in this room here, is that AI will take up more and more critical tasks, which also means there's more and more risk suddenly. Right? You can compare this to, you use more and more computers at some point in the past. Obviously, a cyber attack has more impact on you then. The second one is we'll have new regulations coming up all over the world, in the US as well as in Europe, as well as in China, that will make it very much clearer who's responsible, who's liable for a model not working, for causing harm, for discriminating against someone, for IP infringement, for all these kind of cases. And it will hopefully also make very clear who must carry the risk, right? So who is maybe forced to not waive any liability, but take the risk and then potentially transfer it off, or even be forced to get insurance to have enough capital if things go wrong, if you're responsible for a critical task. And I guess the third comment is that it's our belief that once we have more of these public losses, and we're seeing a few now with generative AI, a few interesting lawsuits, it takes a moment for them to settle. With more losses happening in the market and people hearing about it, decision makers and corporations hearing about it, risk managers being worried about it, the demand for insurance will also rise, or the demand for concepts like the guarantees. If you're interested in how to measure these type of risks, we're also doing some research. But yeah, happy to answer any questions about that as well. And I guess with that, I just say thank you.